Hi everyone, I'm really excited today to get to play with some new products. These are a new concept from Stamps by Me and they're called Quattro D. I've got two sets here and the idea of these, they're called Quattro because they've got 4 steps basically and 4 different elements to them. You've got layering stencils first of all, then a stamp, then a 3D embossing folder, and then an outline die. So the idea is that you're going to create flowers that have got detailed shading from the stenciling. You've got the stamped outline, so if you want to, you can use sort of heat embossing and metallic embossing powders, or keep it simple with plain inks. Then you've got an embossing folder to give them some texture, and then an outline die to cut them out. Really clever idea. All the instructions are here on the back. Now, I've never used anything like this before, so I am literally filming my first attempt at this. So you'll see, hopefully, how easy they are to use. Now, I should have mentioned the names of the 2 sets. I've got Peonies and Magnolia, and this is the Peony set that I'm having a go at first. So it's probably hard to see on camera, but each stencil in the top left-hand corner has got a number. So you've got 1 to 4. 1 and 2 are the flowers, 3 and 4 are the leaves. So you're basically going to need 2 shades of your flower colour and 2 shades of green for your leaves. I'm just taping these down with a bit of masking tape. You could probably get away without taping them down if you really want to. So I'm going with the lightest shade. I'm going for quite a subtle look for these because I like peonies that are kind of a dusky pink colour. So this is Tattered Rose and that's my lightest shade. So that's the first stencil, and then I'm quickly using a pencil. In each corner there's a little cutout, little heart, and you need to just put a pencil mark in each of those so that when you put the next stencil on, you've got something to line up. You could, of course, forget that altogether and use something like a stamping platform to line them up against the edge so that they're in the same place each time. But I'm keeping it simple for this video. So that I've used Victorian Velvet for the next layer, which is just a little bit darker. And look at that detail. I'm kind of a little bit blown away by just how 2 shades can give that much sort of shadow. So this is stencil 3, so now we're on to the leaves. So I've gone for Bundled Sage for my lightest shade, which is this one, number 3. And then I've got Shabby Shutters for the last layer, which is stencil 4. So really quick and easy to use because you've literally just got to line up the 4 hearts in the corner and you know you're absolutely straight then. So it's very, very clever. And then this is Shabby Shutters, which is just a little bit darker. And now here's the big reveal. Look at that. I mean, the detail is really, really beautiful. So the next layer is the stamp. So I've decided to use a stamp platform for this bit, and having never used these before, I'm kind of working out really what the best way to do to line this up. So I've put the acetate image from the stamp packaging on top because I thought that would make it easier to line it up, and actually it does with this peony. And I've put another scrap of card in there because I want this to be quite light, so I'm stamping it off once on card and then going in, but actually that's still too light, so I'm just going to stamp it. I thought the frayed burlap would be a light enough colour, but I didn't want to go straight in and have it too dark, so I left that in rather than edit, just to show you my whole process, because this is my first time using this set, so I kind of wanted to show it as unedited as I could really. So I've trimmed the card down a little bit just so that I can slide it into the embossing folder. Now the next thing to mention, because as I say I'm doing this for the first time, these embossing folders I've never used before in a big shot, so I'm just playing around here working out. The normal plate combination with the Sizzix is 2 plates, but that was too thick, so I've ended up using my base platform, the thin die adapter, and just 1 cutting pad on top, and that's perfect. And look at the detail of that. That embossed detail just really brings it to life. So the last stage is to just cut the outline die. Of course, you don't have to do this. You could put that straight onto a card front if you want white around it. But I'm going through the whole process for both of these sets because I want to see them as they're intended. I'll probably play around with them and do all sorts of combinations afterwards. But for this video, I wanted to sort of show you all 4 steps. So I've decided craft card, you know that's my favourite, is going to look really nice behind this really nice sort of blush pink colour scheme. So I've got an A5 card blank and a slightly smaller piece of craft card. And I'm going to go around the edge with my white gel pen. I just love the look of this on craft cards. So the pen I'm using, in case you want to know, is a Signo Uniball. It's my favourite white gel pen. So just going around all 4 edges, and that's going to give a nice stitch detail around the edge. And then I'm just going to work out what sentiment to use. And I've grabbed, this is a Sizzix stamp set. This is one of the Pete Hughes new sets. And I thought this thank you would fit really nicely in that corner just next to the stem of that flower. And I'm just messing about here to make sure this is set straight. I'm using the grid lines on my Misty just to line it up. And you'll see here, I'm not getting a great image. This is a brand new stamp and I should have probably given it a bit of a wipe first. Quite often with new stamps, they have a bit of residue on them from the manufacturing process. And it's usually a good idea to just either ink them up with Versamark ink and then your ink. That kind of gives it a bit more of a coating. Or just give it a little rub with your finger, really. That usually just does the trick. So it's taken me a few attempts there. Now I've got that stamp primed, it will work fine every time. But I think that works, the size of that just fits perfectly. Now because I've got that lovely embossed detail, and you can really see from the back how the deboss looks, I'm going to use some foam pads, and I'm also going to curve the card slightly to give it even more sort of dimension and shape. So I want them to stand out a little bit. So I'm just working my way around with my foam tape, giving it a little shape, and then that's going to slot just on there. So that's the first card with the Peonies. Next up, let's have a look at the Magnolia. And same thing, you've got the 4 steps. You've got the stencils first, then the stamp, then the embossing folder, and then the outline die. So I'm thinking for this set, I am going to go through all 4 steps just because this is my first time using them, and if you're new to this concept as well, you know I appreciate you want to see it in full. So I apologise, this video might be a little bit long, but I didn't want to edit it too much or you know miss out any bits. So same thing, I've got some white cardstock and we're going to start with the first one. And the colours for this one, I'm going to go for a nice sort of lilac colour scheme for this. And maybe a bit more dramatic. I'm going to be a bit darker in my colours with this one. So I'm going to take that down and then use my pencil to just put the little hearts in the corners, which are going to help me align up the next 3 stencils. And then I will grab a couple of ink colours. So I've grabbed some new colours. The lightest colour that I'm going for here is Milled Lavender. This is a lovely pale colour. I am terrible at using the same colours all the time. And the colours I used for that first card, Tattered Rose and Victorian Velvet, are kind of my go-to. I've got all of the oxide colours in the ink pads because I kind of brought them out. I bought them in sets as they came out. It's probably about the only distressed product where I really have got every single one. But because I keep just using the same ones, I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't the first time I've used this one. So I'm quite glad to have these layering stencils because it does give me a chance to play around with some of these colour combinations. Now, so that's the first layer, Milled Lavender, and now for this second layer I'm a little bit undecided whether to go back to my Victorian Velvet, because that's quite a pinky sort of lavender, or whether the Dusty Concord might be too dark. So I'm just using a scrap of card to look at both, and I decided I'm going to go with the Dusty Concord. I want this one to be a bit more dramatic than the first card in terms of colours, and I want it to be very much sort of more on the purple hues. Victorian Velvet is a little bit pinky, so I don't want it to look the same as the first card. And look at that, the detail and the sort of dramatic change between the colours is lovely. So now we're on to stencil 3. This is one of the leaves, and I'm going to stick with the same leaf colours as the first card because I thought that was quite a nice combo. So it's Bundled Sage for this lightest one on stencil 3, and then Shabby Shutters for the next one, which is a little bit darker. I should mention actually these stencils just wipe clean, so and because they are wipe clean, you don't have to stress about cleaning them immediately. I just put mine to one side and clean them all up at the end, just with a baby wipe. The ink just wipes straight off. So that's the first layer of the leaves, and then this is the last number 4 stencil. So I'm going in with my Shabby Shutters for this one. And it's just a little bit darker. And probably a bit more yellow actually, but it just gives a variation between the two greens. There we go. Isn't that beautiful? So now we're on to the stamping, and for this one I am going to go for a bit more of a dramatic look. I'm going to stamp in black. I should mention, if you did want to heat emboss, maybe with say gold metallic embossing powder or something, you'd want to make sure that all this stenciling is dry, so you might want to hit it with a heat tool before you move to this step, otherwise your embossing powder is just going to stick everywhere. So you definitely want to make sure it's dry and use an anti-static tool before you start inking up your stamp with clear ink. Now I'm trying here to do the same as I did with the last one and use the acetate, but actually you'll see here I give up on this idea because I didn't really need it with this one. I think just because, maybe perhaps because I've gone for a darker colour, but also perhaps the outside of the flowers are a bit more pronounced. After faffing about like this for a couple of minutes, I realised that actually I could see perfectly well just by looking at the coloured areas, and that acetate wasn't really helping me at all. So I would guess, depending on what flowers you've got and what colours you've used, try both methods and see which gives you the sort of clearer way to line up. I'm sorry about my head getting in the way, but you kind of need to look directly over it to make sure it's lined up properly. So it's hard to do when you're trying to film at the same time. So I'm pretty confident I've got that lined up, and now I'm going to go in with Versafine Clear. And I'll just give that a quick rub over to make sure it's transferred nicely. Obviously using a stamp platform you can go back in if you need to, but that's stamped absolutely perfectly. And look how dramatic it looks. It really does make those flowers pop. So now we've done our stamping. Next up is the embossing, of course. So I've trimmed this down a little bit, so hopefully it'll fit perfectly in the embossing folder. So just before I pop that in the embossing folder, I'm going to give it a quick blast with the heat tool, just because that black ink still looked a bit wet and I don't want to get black ink all over my embossing folder. So I just gave it a quick dry, and then again it's really easy to line up because you can see so clearly through these folders. They're nice and clear, and you can line up the embossed areas nicely with the outline. So same thing, I'm using a big shot, so I'm using the base platform, the thin die adapter, and then just one cutting pad on top, and that's perfect. And it really does give a lovely detail. So the final step for this one is of course the outline die. So I'm just going to pop that onto my cutting plates, and then I'm just going to use a bit of maker's tape to make sure that doesn't move as I put it through. Of course, with these dies being all open, it's really easy to line up, of course, and see exactly where you're cutting. So I'll just run that through. Sorry, my machine's just slightly off camera. I just don't have enough space on my desk to get it all in shot. So that's die cut beautifully, and of course it cuts all the little areas out in between the flowers as well, so you get a really beautiful finish, really professional looking. So now I've got to decide what to put this on, and I'm thinking because of this lovely purple colour that a sort of turquoisey colour would be a nice background. So I'm going to go with an A5 card again, and an aqua background for these flowers, I think. So I'm going to stamp a sentiment onto the same colour card. I don't want to introduce another colour, and I want to keep this quite simple. This is another Pete Hughes Sizzix sentiment actually, and I'm just going to cut that into a strip. So that's going to go along the bottom and be quite subtle. And then I'm going to use a craft card blank, so I'm just going to trim that aqua panel down slightly so that you'll see a nice border. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, lovely. So I'll just use some double-sided tape to pop this onto the card front. I could do something with this background, like put an embossed pattern on there or something, but I think these flowers are so stunning. I don't really want to detract in any way. And I think really for this video, I kind of wanted to keep these quite simple, really. I wanted the focus really to be on showing you how they work more than different card ideas as such. I wanted the two cards to be a little bit different in style, but focus on the technique more than anything else. So I think that really works well, and I'm really pleased with how that aqua looks with that lovely purple I've got going on now. Same as last time, because I've got all that lovely texture and dimension and all that lovely embossing, I'm going to put these on foam pads so that they've got a bit more sort of shape to them. So I'm just going around putting these all over, and then I can work out exactly how to place that sentiment strip and how to stick that down. I haven't put any foam pads right on the bottom of that stem, so I can either tuck it under the sentiment if I want to, or pop it above. So I've stuck the flowers down, and then I can work out. And I think for the sentiment I'm going to use glue dots because it will give it a little bit of dimension without being quite as high. And I'm just doing the two ends so that I can decide what to do with that stem. And I think actually if I just have it touching so it kind of anchors it, that's about the best. And here are both of the finished cards. Don't they just look stunning? Really love this concept. If you're interested in getting hold of these two beautiful sets, the Peony and the Magnolia, they are going to be launching on Create and Craft on the 23rd of August. I think the show times are 7, 9 and 11, but check that because, as you know, they do sometimes change. I'll put all the details though in the description box below on YouTube, and I'll put links to the Stamps by Me website and all the other places you might want to pop and visit. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.